How do you think the script is set for the Blue Jays? What has to happen for them to pull off what many would look at as a pretty big upset in this game for the way the pitching's matched up?
I'm not exactly sure how their pitching is going to unfold. They're starting Louis Varland, which is a bit of a surprise, I would say, considering he allowed the game-tying home run to Judge, 3-run shot, and the go-ahead home run last night by Jazz Chisholm Jr. But I'm sure it's a matter of get right back on the horse and let's go. It's going to be one inning. It's going to be the first inning, most likely. Obviously, one inning, most likely. And from there, I'm not exactly sure. And we talked about this a little bit on the broadcast last night. Trey Yesavage will be on 2 days rest coming off 78 pitches on the road in a hostile environment. Kevin Gausman, we don't know exactly if he's in play. He would be on 3 days rest. And clearly he is someone who has done this before. He's more experienced than Yesavage is. Which of those two, if either of them will come into play or both, we don't know exactly yet. John Schneider said last night, as you might expect, that everyone is in play, and I would expect that to be the case. I'm sure they have a plan, and I'm sure it involves their lefties and probably Eric Lauer for a good chunk of this game, but we'll see how this plan unfolds because, of course, what happens on the field is going to dictate in part how Schneider runs his pitching staff.
You mentioned Louis Varland is starting tonight. Louis
He
Varland's
is.
reaction to the pitch that you threw, that when you talked to him, that he threw to Aaron Judge, who ended up hitting the home run.
Well, actually, I wasn't the one who talked to him, but he did give this quote out to a number of writers, and he said it was a really good pitch that Judge made look really bad. And that's a great assessment of it because the pitch was well inside. As Sarah Langs reported last night, it was 1.2 feet inside from the center of home plate. That's a good distance. And it was astonishing to me when I looked at the game day and saw where the pitch was that far in, that Judge was able to get his hands in and he was able to keep the ball fair, hit it off the foul pole. And when I went into the Yankees clubhouse afterward, my intent was to ask as many players as I could just their impressions of that. And Paul Goldschmidt, one of the more understated guys in the game, he says, it's the best swing I've ever seen. Definitely in person, maybe of all time. When Paul Goldschmidt says that, that to me means something. And the other players were equally astonished. I asked Stanton, I said, hey, could other players do that? And he goes, show me video. Show me video of someone else doing that. That's how impressed his own teammates were by that particular swing in that particular moment and that whole thing that went down right then.
It was one of the more impressive homers I've ever seen. I mean, the guy swings a two-tone bat and it hit the handle side and he still hit it out. There's not many guys who could do that. Big home run, but I think it was even bigger because of the very palpable momentum swing that it represented with the game being tied at that point. The guy with all the homers doing it finally in the playoffs. And from your perspective, that momentum shift obviously went through forward through the rest of the game. What is it going to take offensively for Toronto to pull that back like they had in the first two games? What are you looking for to have that tone set early in this game for?
Trevor, it's a good question. And Cam Schlittler is someone who is coming off one of the best starts we've ever seen in the postseason or any other time, the 8-inning performance against the Red Sox. But you go back to September 5th. That was his second start against the Blue Jays of his career. This tonight will be the third time he is facing the Blue Jays, and it's the first time he's ever seen a team 3 different times. That's where we are. And in that game against the Blue Jays, they fouled off 24 pitches. He threw 66 pitches in an inning and 2/3. So I don't know that he's going to be the same guy tonight that we saw in September. He's going to have to make some adjustments, and he won't be the same guy he was in Boston when he overwhelmed, or against Boston, when he overwhelmed them with his fastball. So they obviously had some degree of success against Schlittler. They knocked him out of the game after 1 2/3 innings, and the cat and mouse game resumes tonight, right? How is he going to adjust to them? How will they adjust to him? They have been an offensive juggernaut in this series until the latter innings last night when the Yankees bullpen shut them down pretty well. So that to me is the interesting part, how the Jays kind of rebound. All teams experience tough losses during the season. The Jays, the Yankees, every team. they're accustomed to doing this. It's not like they're devastated psychologically, but at the same time, they had a 6-1 lead and a potential sweep in their hands, and it didn't happen.
Ken, more questions for you about Toronto's pitching. Number one, do you think there was any consideration for going with Gausman here on short rest, or there's just too much history with this not working? Because you do have Yesavage for game 5 on full rest if you wanted to go that way. And part two, and I was on Toronto radio this morning and they asked, and I was trying to ask them back, like, what is the status of Chris Bassett and Scherzer, I think, was healthy. Do you think that they could have used one of those guys, even if they didn't feel like the stuff looked as crisp as it normally does for Scherzer at the end of the year? And I don't know what Bassett's situation was, but now you're looking like, bullpen game here?
As for Gausman, yes, they could use him, but they're not going to use him as a starter. And Scott, you're absolutely right. The history of starters on 3 days rest is abysmal in the postseason. And I was surprised the Cubs did it with Boyd. I know they had limited options, obviously. So I don't expect Gausman to pitch in that kind of role if he pitches at all. And he is a guy also who has said he prefers extra rest, and he would be on extra rest in game 5 if necessary. So maybe Yesavage is the choice tonight. But again, Gausman is the more experienced pitcher. Now, as for the decision on Scherzer and Bassett, Scherzer hasn't pitched all that well. So they felt that they preferred 4 lefties in the bullpen in this scenario with the Yankees left-handed hitters to give John Schneider more weapons to play with as these games proceeded. Chris Bassett was coming off an injury, not fully built up yet, so he wasn't as much of a consideration. I would expect both will be considerations if the Blue Jays advance, but the key thing was they wanted the 4 lefties in the pen. And tonight, as they play this matchup game with the Yankees, which is what this is going to be, it could work to their advantage.
Can the bullpen stop this lineup? They have scored 14 runs against the bullpen, and they have a bullpen game. If they do stop this lineup, is this bullpen built to continue to push the Blue Jays on the rest of the way? Because you can't continue in a 7-game series the way they've been going, because they're just going to get depleted.
You're absolutely right, Eric. And we didn't see Sir Anthony Dominguez last night. We didn't see Jeff Hoffman. We didn't see some of their other relievers who we will see tonight. It's going to be interesting because the bullpen was a question coming into it, not so much because of the setup types like Varland and Dominguez. They're pretty happy with those guys. Hoffman has been a guy who allowed, I believe, the most home runs by an American League reliever, 15 home runs this season. So he is a concern. But as for holding the Yankees down tonight, I don't know. It's not going to be easy, obviously. Yankee Stadium is a much different environment, clearly, than Rogers Center. And it's going to be a challenge for the Blue Jays. They're not in an ideal situation here against Cam Schlittler, for sure. But at the same time, trying to predict these games, trying to predict what might happen is a fool's errand. And I'm not even going to attempt it.
It is full of decision-making. Ken will be watching. Have a great broadcast tonight. Thanks for swinging by.
Thanks, Scott.
So that's Ken Rosenthal, FT Senior Insider. Of course, you'll hear him later on Fox and on Fair Territory later this week, part of the FT Network. Live questions. If you have them, then bring them for Grillin' Ken. And Inside Scoop is presented by Lids. Shout out to Lids. It's not just hats. Lids is the new home for all things Topps trading cards, including the latest Bowman Chrome drop. We opened a box. We're going to give one away. We'll have more details on that as the postseason continues. But what you need to know for now, if you want 20% off your next headwear or apparel purchase at any U.S. Lids store in person, you text Territory, Territory. Hopefully you know how that's spelled at this point. Territory to 29017.